Relly, welcome to Hosted by Posh. You go by Disposable Relly. You're one of the biggest up and coming photographers in the nightlife scene in New York City, I'd say right now. A lot of people don't know where you got your start, and also that you had a totally other career path before you got into the game. So maybe just start by like running us through where'd you grow up, how was it being like an Upper East Side kid, and then what was your career trajectory until you got into photography?
Yeah. So grew up in New York City, Upper East Side. Yeah, very different career path. I actually was like more of I played basketball in college, so that was kind of like my entire life growing up was just like school and basketball.
Yeah.
And went to college, then went to law school, which was pretty crazy because we're very far off that path now. Um, And honestly, like it just never was for me, but I was good at it. So I've like bounced around at like so many big firms in the city. Um, I was at Cobra and Kim, this firm called Sidley Austin. Actually, is kind of like my saving grace for getting into photography, because I got let go and like during COVID, like right at the beginning. Um, and I just had like a ton of time on my hands.
Mm.
And yeah, I started taking pictures with disposable cameras. I definitely was like one of the less kosher people on the internet during COVID, for sure. And yeah, like I was just using disposable cameras all the time. Um,
So were you already in the scene, or like how do you get into the nightlife scene and start meeting all these organizers that you work with now?
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I went out a lot, like a decent amount. So there were like places that I went to all the time, but like definitely not in the same capacity that I am now. But like a lot of my friends are from the city and like work in different spaces. So it's kind of one of those things that like once I was doing it, things like very easily fell into
Mm.
place. Because they were like, oh, this is really cool. Like, um,
But
you
you
should do
hadn't
it.
shot before the pandemic at all.
No, I
Wow.
literally Project 91.
Right.
I showed up. So this kid told me I used to use the green disposable Fuji films,
Yeah.
and it was really honestly for like attention. And this kid came up to me at like a house party during COVID. He was like really drunk and really passionate, and I got really upset honestly. And he was like, why do you use that? It's so stupid. It's so expensive. Like, it's not about it being like you should get like a cool camera. Like, it's about the energy that you put behind the
Do
camera. Like, people feed off that.
you think that's facts now, or?
Oh, dude, I like see this kid all the time, and I'm like, you did this for me,
Wow.
like because I was like, shut up, like leave me alone, like it was like some random drunk kid, but he was 110% right. I went out and bought a point and shoot, and DM'd Project 91 right in like the beginning of their stages,
Yeah.
and I was like, you need me, and they were like, what's your rate? And then I like Googled what my rate should be, and brought my point and shoot and brought a big SLR camera that I didn't know how to use yet. And I just wore it to like look official
Damn.
and then just took pictures on my point and shoot. And they're like, we love it. Like, come back. And I was like, wow, that dude was really right. Like, that's kind of crazy.
And that's like back in 2021, or?
That's like end of 2020, maybe beginning of 2021.
Wow.
I just had like a little like camera that I kind of screwed around with. My aunt was a film photographer.
Yeah.
And when I was like 18, she passed away, and everyone was like, "You guys are like the same person, like growing up,"
Mm.
which really meant we just had like the most white friends out of everyone in our family. um, and so like when I decided to get into it, I already had like thousands and thousands of dollars of like film photography equipment in my closet at
Oh.
home.
Oh.
So like it wasn't even like this big investment
Right.
thing. I like literally like drove. My mom was like, "It's COVID," and she like hid in the room while I went into the apartment and like dug out all of the photography stuff, and I just like had all of these toys to like figure out how to use.
Wow. And so
Yeah.
from there, you had the equipment. You obviously, started to get an eye for what, made sense. How did
Yeah.
you kind of go about building your book of business?
Honestly, Just like word of mouth. Even some of the bigger photographers that I know that book like really big clients, so much of it is word of mouth. It's like personal connections, connections of connections. Like if your work is good,
Yeah.
if people like it, it's definitely helpful that like that film reemergence like happened kind of like really timely
Right.
when I was like beginning. COVID also helped me because like a lot of nightlife and event stuff kind of reset
Mhm.
because it all went out of business. So kind of everyone was on the same playing field suddenly. Like
Yep.
a starting photographer, like if you were still shooting during COVID, you got the chance to build and connect with people.
Right.
I always say I made the most friends I've ever made in the shortest amount of time during COVID. Like
I can relate to that for sure.
it was like incredible. Like people I would have never ever met or hung out with, just like who's available to hang out, like whose house has outdoor space, like we're going there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an awesome time, honestly.
So a lot of attendees get to know you, and we're seeing this interesting shift in the live experience world right now where freelancers are influencers at the same time. And I think you've probably even been on like flyers now, or there's attendees that are looking forward to seeing you just as much as they are like a DJ or whoever the performance act is. Where do you think your value lies now in terms of the split between, is it even about the photos now, or is it more like I'm at a party with Disposable Relly and I might end up on his Instagram page at some point?
I think it's definitely like 50-50.
Yeah.
It's like the photos are really good. And because the photos are good, you want to be mentioned, but you also want to be mentioned in like certain places and like spaces and people to recognize the fact that you were there. I used to have like my logo was like I used to like put my logo on pictures, and my friend hit me up and was like, "Hey, just like pro tip, like maybe have something that like actually says you're at, so like people will find you." And I had this like whole marketing scheme in my head that I had like dreamt up like the week before, and I was
Yeah.
like, actually, that's like a really good idea, probably. And I changed it that day, and people always tell me they're like, I see the little like disposable Relly thing, and like know who took that, where they took it. And so I think it's like being mentioned in a group of people is kind of like what people are really into. Yes, it's kind of like half and half. It's like I hope I get my. Also, if you go to a party and you know for a fact like there is a photographer there, like if you show up to public hotel,
Yeah.
you're not like expecting a photographer. You're like going to a really fun party.
Right.
But if I'm like hosting the party or having a party there, like you know that there is photography at this event. There's something to take away because even if I'm having a party or even if it's like mentions my name, like you know for a fact that there are going to be like photographers there.
I think what's interesting too is I know for a fact that like probably 90% of events I go to there will be a photographer, but I know I'm not going to get those photos because like they're not very social, they're not trying to come up to you. Like,
Yeah.
are you trying to kind of break down that barrier and be more social?
Yeah, I think that's where like the business has grown the most. Aesthetically, first of all, like I think people always come up to me and it wasn't really my intention. But when, especially when I get like people that like find my email or like submit to me like via my website, they're always like, we love the candid nature of your photography.
Yeah.
And the difference is that if I go to a fun party, like being a part of the party is the best way to get the best photos. Is like actually being involved. Like I'm there, I'm having a good time with everyone, and it
You gotta
feels
have
like
the
I
same-
happen to have my camera on
Yeah.
me. Like
Mm.
instead of like I'm like creeping around shooting. And like there are things that I go to where like I do have to be, you know, like if I shoot someone's engagement party, I'm not like partying
Yeah.
with everyone. So
Maybe a little at the end.
yeah, like you know, but like being a part of the energy is where I get like the best photos for sure.
And because you recognize that value, do you charge more for that?
It depends. I'll do like a. Also depends on the brand. It kind of tough because like people know when they have good events. Like
Yeah.
Right.
so like if someone has a really good party, like I'll charge to post it because you get that association of like, okay, like I guarantee you like this post and this engagement. We're also in the age of like actual like stats and numbers on engagement. So like someone who has 100,000 Instagram followers, that's a photographer, definitely is like probably really talented. But now it's a lot about metrics and numbers. So I could be like, that guy's 100,000 followers, but here I can show you what my engagement looks like on things that I post. So if you want that, you know, to be distributed to my followers, then I'll charge you. But sometimes if someone knows that they have a sick party, like I'm probably just gonna post it anyway because it's like good for me too.
Right.
So they'll be like, no, never mind, and then I post it next week anyway. But yeah, it definitely like plays into my favor.
So talk about Avante and I were both also freelancers in this space. Avante was DJing. I did some photo video stuff, and a lot of the organizers we know kind of had that graduation from freelancer to event organizer. What was the inflection point when you first wanted to be an organizer? How did it get started? And walk us through your event series. Maybe give the name.
Yeah. So I have an event series. Have a hat called Bodega Flowers and Seltzer Water. I'm a birthday diva, so I always have like a massive party for my birthday.
Yeah.
So I kind of like had like, I don't know, once a year, I just like organize a massive party. Never was a promoter, never like did anything like that. Bodega Flowers and Seltzer Water started with an art show based on like my ex-girlfriend. And it kind of like just happened.
Dig into that. I love that because there's not a lot of experiences that people put on where they're based off of like a personal story.
Yeah. So I write like a ton. And when I had the idea for the show, we were like still together. We'd gotten back together. So it was like I was writing a lot and I was incorporating my writing into my photos by like captioning my writing with the photos, which people like oddly connected with. I was just like super depressed and I was like, I'm putting it on the internet. And people were like, man, like I love this. And I was like, didn't expect that reaction, which kind of had this like self-promotion of the art show, like naturally.
Right.
And I started like incorporating Bodega Flowers and Seltzer Water into like the end of like everything that I wrote.
Why? What was the genesis of that name?
My ex, every time we fought, I would get flowers from the bodega to apologize. And she did not work in nightlife and she was sober and like home, much older than me. And she always asked me like when I was coming back if I could get her seltzer and jewel pods from the deli. And so that's literally where the name came from.
New York love story.
Yeah.
Adding jewel pods to the name would have
literally, yeah, right. Bodega Flowers, Seltzer Water, jewel pods. But yeah, and the art show, the whole like idea of the art show is to like showcase something super personal,
right.
But that it's also like really fun. Like the idea of an art show seems really like stuffy, but it was really fun. We got like a bunch of cool DJs. We worked with At Vodka and Lullaby, and it was like an open bar and all these like cool cocktail experiences. And we like led up to the show for like a month and a half. So like people were just like, you know, I don't have any parties, so I was just like promoting this one event for like a month and a half. I wore the same outfit every weekend, every day for a month and a half. And it was a Bodega Flowers and Seltzer Water shirt, a floral cardigan, and black pants every single day, every weekend to promote the show.
That's dope.
Yeah, I have not worn that outfit since the show, but yeah, it was awesome and everyone had a good time. And it wasn't supposed to be a series, but after it, people were like, "What are you gonna do next?" And I was like, "I guess we just keep going." Yeah.
And it was just your art?
It was my art and my friend Miguel, who worked with me on the project. Also another really talented photographer. And then my friend Ed and Sivan like put up some paintings, and my friend Jeremy Liebman showed some of his photos too. So it was like really cool, like collaborative effort of friends too. Like all of our friends like not only showed their work, but came and like supported. And it was really cool. My friend Grace embroidered shirts. I didn't even know she did that before the event. She was like, "Do you want some shirts?" And I was like, "Don't you like work a corporate job?" And she's like, "Yeah, but I do this on the side." So
now, how many events have you hosted?
Well, between bodega flowers and seltzer water, I've had like 4 or
Sick.
5. And then I still do things with disposable Relly. I kind of
Right.
keep them separate. One is more like, like a random party on a Thursday night, like come out to this, more like hosting. Bodega Flowers is a more like experiential. Like there's story behind every event that we have. Usually a personal story of like why we're here in this space. There are like activations and experiences that you can like go do. Whereas like if I host stuff on Relly, we just like throw a really big party.
So I think something that's really interesting is a lot of people, it's easy to get to that point where you host an event, all your homies come together, like you have all this support of everyone that wants to help you do the first event. But I think a lot of people, we see them host that first event, and then it's very hard to get traction and get to that second event. And like once you get to the second, doing the third, fourth, and fifth is easier because you kind of have like a flow.
Definitely.
But what do you think you did between the first and second that like gave you that flow?
I think one thing that I did was collaborate with other people. So the second event I had, I collaborated with this group called Alta, and they're DJs. They host events as well. But honestly, like I think the biggest thing about what happened with Bodega Flowers is that it was like something that like people like connected to. So it was like, yeah, I'm going to a party, but I'm going to like a party that's like about something. And like every time, the DJs get a lot of exposure because we like talk about the DJs coming up. Like I just believe in like everyone not just having a party and like listing the DJs, but like in the week leading up, like we talk about like who the DJ is and like what their life experience is, how we met, like why is this person even playing this party?
Yep.
And I'm like, I met them here. It's crazy that we're doing this because, I was working at a law firm and they were like working at a bank and like suddenly we're here like DJ whatever. So I think that's a part of it too.
Is that where New York nightlife is going now? Because obviously a lot of clubs many didn't survive COVID, but a lot have come back. But I think we've seen a huge rise in the more community-oriented events that are more about celebrating the attendees instead of just who can buy the most expensive bottle table. Is that where we're going?
I think we're definitely moving into an event host oriented space. Not every event host has like a deep origin story.
Yeah.
But I always joke around like my ex-girlfriend has like the best life ever. She has like a bunch of parties thrown in her name like all year.
Has she come to one?
She almost came to the art show. We were sharing locations and she got there and got nervous and left. It's a lot of like pressure. I also like don't refer to her by her real name. So even when we like got back together, she would like come places and people would call her by this name that I made up. And she'd be like, that's not
Sounds
me.
really
But
healthy.
yeah, but like cool. Yeah, really, really healthy. But yeah, I think it's more about like people following different individuals than just like when I was in college and high school and stuff, it was like you just show up to a place and expect it to be a good night. There was no like, so and so is here.
Why am I here?
Yeah, it was just like, it's Saturday.
I don't
we're
wanna be bored
going
at
to
home.
like
Yeah.
we're going to there. Or there was like a promoter texting you like,
Right.
come to my table, whatever. There was no like, so and so's having a party at. The club and the venues are now kind of like secondary to
For
the
sure.
people that are hosting them.
For sure.
Also secondary to the DJs, which I think is really cool too, because like now DJs have much more of a platform than just like the guys like playing music that
I think
night.
it's super driven by the DJ. I think what's interesting about your brand is that you're taking the element of the DJ, right? People aren't necessarily coming for that DJ's music. They're coming for that DJ's brand and like their aesthetic. You see whether it's like John Summit, like with a bottle of 42, or like the guy who like doesn't say a word and is like so cool and they all want to be with him. Like you have an aesthetic as a photographer where they want to come for your photography, but they also just want to be in a room with you because they know that the other people that will be there at a Disposable Relly event are people they want to be around. And I think it's like that name embodies a demographic of people these days.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Super interesting.
It's really, I mean, just like seeing the shift happen as like someone who did go out a lot
Right.
when I was younger is crazy because now I'm on this like other side that's also younger too, which is really interesting because I feel like everyone's trying to catch up. Like whatever's coming next.
Mm-hmm.
And so being, like on the forefront of that is really interesting because I'm also like kind of following the lead of people that are younger and less experienced than me, honestly.
So talk about that. Like, how do you stay on top of style? And also for the people watching, my hypothesis is that a lot of New York culture begins at the events and then spreads into fashion and music and all these
Yeah.
other things. What do you think about that?
I think what's really cool and kind of it's like I'm a little jealous of the generation of people that are like in nightlife and in fashion like now is that there used to be this kind of it's the reason I even like went into the corporate world in the first place
Yeah.
because I felt like that was the only way you could be successful.
Mm.
And younger people have this like I can do anything mentality, which is awesome. Like
Yeah.
when I go to certain people's parties, like there's like 5 photographers, 6 videographers, like all in there doing the same thing, which a lot of people would find kind of like disheartening maybe, but I think it's so cool that everyone can kind of do whatever they want. I honestly think that fashion on a larger scale mirrors what happens, like what the 22-year-olds are doing, right? And they now have this like freedom of expression where like trends change so quickly now because people wear whatever they want to wear. And like if they want to wear fuzzy socks to the club, like no one can tell them to not. And then suddenly there's a picture, right? Of someone in fuzzy socks and like a crazy shirt in the club and it's gone viral suddenly. Or like a big photographer took a picture of it and now it's a trend.
Do you get worried about that accessibility to becoming a photo videographer and the overall like market saturation of creatives? Because there were definitely less back in the day and it was more of like a slow grind to get the equipment that you needed. It's good for democratizing it as a trade, obviously, but like, does it worry you now that you're someone who's already in it and now there's all these other people competing?
Definitely sometimes, honestly. Like I've seen photographers who've asked me for advice before, like overnight shoot up and have like crazy followings, like all of a sudden. It definitely is like super motivating, but also like we said before, like it's about personalizing the experience because everyone, there's so many talented creatives. Like it's especially in New York City, it's endless. So making it personal and making people want to follow like you, it's more about who you are as an individual now than the talent because we have access to like unlimited talent now.
Right.
And we can find them. They're on Instagram, they're on TikTok. It's like one step away. So I mean that definitely also motivated me to start doing events too. Like bring another piece to the table for sure.
It's similar to like in tech, we always talk about like you could build Facebook tomorrow, but you wouldn't have like the people or the brand and anything. So like no one would use it, even though it could function the same way.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like the brand is everything. I think as everything gets commoditized, brand is all that's going to matter in the future. So I mean, you're definitely doing it really well. What do you think in the event space? Like you go to an event, right? You go to an event this Friday night. Like what do you think is generally lacking the most on the typical event you go to?
I think differentiating for people that host multiple events, especially, I think, and it's definitely like a challenge I face too, of like, how do I make this event different from the last one? Because, I could like reproduce the same really awesome party that I had 2 weeks ago and have another one that's, essentially exactly the same, but eventually people get bored. It's like I've done this already. So I think that is kind of where we're losing steam. It's like how do we create a different experience every time, which is really hard in a place like New York. There's 7 parties on one street.
Yeah.
So it is like a difficult thing to face, especially when you have so many shiny things pulling you in 100 directions. It's hard to like get people, even your best friends sometimes are like, yeah, but like so and so's playing here, so like I think I'm gonna go to this party tonight.
I love that seems like the reason why you have the story arc to your events, and I think you posted a note explaining each one before.
Yeah. So like that's how we like kind of. I also just like as a creative want all of the people that are contributing to like get some kind of credit, you know? Like you go to a restaurant, you don't get like no one's like giving you like a detail about the chef, you know? You just like know that the food is really good. Unless you were like, you know, into that. But I think that's like everyone getting their kind of like credit, and people will then follow them for that reason.
There's more of a talking point too. Like if I had something about the chef, at least I have like a first thing to mention on like that date or something. It's like, hey,
Exactly.
the chef is dope. I like researched him. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like, there's nothing to talk about. It's like, all right, we're at this event, but why are me and you at this event together? Like,
Yeah.
what similar interests do we share?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't do that very well, but
Totally.
yeah, and that's really dope. What is next for you guys? Like, what are you gonna do to kind of alleviate that from your own events and make the next ones really different?
Yeah, I think as far as Bodega Flowers goes, it's like more about it not just being parties. Because I think that we are also in like a space of, especially with the content creation too, like it's not, nightlife is awesome. And I think nightlife people also get exhausted of nightlife as well. So my main goal with my event platform is to also like provide a bunch of different experiences on a whole. Like nightlife will still be a part of it. Parties will still be, you know, at its core. But like we just did an event at a wine bar called Sauced in Williamsburg, where we like brought in guest chefs and we had some singers come in. My friend Maria, who like works at Noise, has like an amazing single. So we were like, come sing. Like I've never like actually heard you perform. I've only heard you on Spotify. And she came and sang, and it was awesome. We're doing a pop-up with a group called Makana next week.
Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah, they're awesome. So like we're doing stuff with Makana at a gallery on Houston and Bowery. And so like that's gonna be a week-long thing. We're doing like thrift pop-ups. So like
Damn, big summer.
yeah, it's a heavy summer, but it's like it's cool because it's not just the same.
It's not just a
thing
nightlife
over.
event, 10 to 4, bottle service,
Yeah,
guest
exactly.
list.
Even a day party, you know, like it's
Yeah.
not like come to this rooftop like on Saturday, which, you know, if you go out at all in New York City, especially with platforms, you get a mass text by people that have collected your data. And now it's like, I got this mass text, but I also saw something about this, like, oh, like it's like kind of like dual fold where like you got that text message and notification, and then it pops in your head more because you're like, it's almost like reading an article. You're like, I read about that actually.
Right.
So,
Totally.
oh, this actually is a good idea.
No, that's really
sick.
dope. That's really dope.
Before we wrap up, fun game. Avante and I are gonna give you a venue. You got to give one person you'd see there. It can be a DJ or promoter. One article of clothing, and one song that you would hear at some point in the night. You got it? All right, Little Sister.
Michael Simpson, Crazy Glasses. I Just Want to Rock. DJ.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Mirage.
Brooklyn Mirage. That's a tough one. John Summit. He just wears like button downs. So that. And literally every John Summit song that's ever played.
Public Rooftop.
Public. I guess Gabe Liberty, because he runs the events there and DJs. Black T-shirt, and I can't think of a song. Yeah.
Usually house music, right?
Yeah, it's house music.
You got another good underground one?
Basement.
Wow, that's a tough one. Who's the last person I thought Basement? I can't think of a DJ for Basement or a person. Oh,
Usually can't see anyone.
yeah. I was gonna say. Photographer.
Okay.
Maybe Alan Schindelverse. And he'll be wearing like a really weird, colorful button-down shirt.
Colorful.
Yeah, he's a very colorful dude. Dyed
But Basement
hair.
was all black.
Yeah, dyed hair. And he'll have his camera out doing his thing.
And give us your favorite venue.
Favorite venue.
And like the 3 things for the
3 things. Okay. Tough. Okay, I like public arts the best.
Yeah.
For sure. I love Little Sister because I can count on the hip hop.
Yeah.
Public is just massive. It's so big, but it still feels intimate, which I really like about it. And Little Sister, it's the only club I can count on that like constantly is playing hip hop music if
Yeah.
that's what I'm in the mood for.
Dope.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate
Thank
it.
you
And
guys for
we're
having
looking
me.
forward to
Yeah.
seeing you at a bunch of parties and hopefully, you know, getting mixed in the content a little bit.
Yeah.
A few photos of us here.
I
and
got
there.
you.
But yeah, appreciate
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Relly.
man. Thank you.
Peace.
Cheers.
Thanks, bro.